Peter Credlin.
In his most recent reshuffle, Scott Morrison gave Queensland Senator Amanda Stoker a promotion, with the extra responsibilities for the women's portfolio added to her existing workload as the Assistant Minister to the Attorney-General. Since then, Senator Stoker has been subject to countless attacks on Twitter from trolls and Green Left activists, as well as Australian of the Year Grace Tame, who inaccurately accused Senator Stoker of endorsing a fake rape crisis campaign on university campuses. Now Stoker is setting the record straight with a message of her own. Senator Amanda Stoker joins me now from Canberra. Senator, thank you for your time. Grace Tame accused you of endorsing a fake rape crisis campaign pushed by Bettina Arndt some time back. I've corrected it here. We've gone through what you said in Senate estimates at the time, but for the avoidance of doubt, what's the truth of the claim?
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me on the show. And can I thank you for being one of those people who does stick to the facts and for putting those facts on the table last week. The fact is, I'm someone who has always fought for free speech. And so when universities were engaging in deplatforming practices so that students weren't being exposed to ideas that might confront their pre-existing worldview, then I tried to point out how important it is to be exposed to differences of opinion in order to enhance the learning experience. Iron sharpens iron, and sometimes you've got to be exposed to different thinking in order to be able to solve the problems that we'll face as a nation into the future. So she was mistaken, and I don't hold that against her, but what we can learn from this is how important it is that if we're going to deliver on the things that really matter for Australian women, and that is safety at home, in the workplace and in public, if we're going to deliver on economic security for women, and if we're going to provide pathways to leadership for women, then we need to work together and not be trying to tear down anyone who doesn't fit their short-term, hard-left political objective.
You also, in that estimates Hansard that I read last week too, pointed out where universities had breached their own codes of conduct. You pointed out too where speakers on the right were being hit with security costs and fees that were not being levied against speakers on the left. You know, a big double standard there. Magda Szubanski, she's an actor, a comedian that most people would know. She attacked you on Twitter over the weekend, saying the reshuffle has handed power to you, another of the small but noisy Christian Soldiers faction, hijacking the national agenda. We've just had Easter on the weekend. If anyone's had a break at Easter, it's because of a Christian holiday. What's your response to Magda Szubanski?
Look, I think it's very unhelpful for people to be trying to dismiss one another using labels that don't reflect the depth of a person's contribution across a whole range of fields. If Magda knew anything about me, she'd know that I'd been a public prosecutor, worked really hard to protect women and children who'd been victims of particularly online sexual exploitation, that I had, as a barrister, worked pro bono for many women who'd experienced sexual harassment and needed help through it, many of whom I keep in touch with today. They really don't know very much at all about my commitment to the issue. And it's really important, I think, that we don't try and tear one another down over this stuff. This should be the kind of issue on which people can work together. And when I think about what matters to the mums at the school gate, or to the women who are in the sandwich generation, who are both caring for kids and caring for older parents, when I think about women who are retraining after having kids or struggling to get resources for a special need of their child at school, that's what they're worried about. They're not interested in some kind of hard left culture war that's about stopping the kind of progress that would make a difference to their lives.
Look, I agree with you 100%, you know, and I've sat there and looked at polling for many years about what cuts through to women on these sorts of issues. But I tell you, it dismays me, it must dismay you, that when we're talking about public discourse in this country, there's a standard applied to the left that's never applied to anyone on the right, let alone a conservative. And you're right, you have all of those defences of women in your history prior to coming into Parliament in the law. But that's never mentioned, is it? That's not part of the Amanda Stoker story that's told on Twitter, and that's not fair.
Look, it's not, but ultimately this isn't about me. Ultimately, this is about Australian women and their ability to choose what they want to do with their lives. And that might be the career track. It might be taking time to care for their family. It might be about community leadership. It might be about breaking glass ceilings, or it might be about building a business of their own. But they're all valid choices. We should value them all and value them equally and support women to be able to take those choices for themselves, succeed in whatever they pick, and reap the rewards of their effort. Those are our values, and their values I'm happy to fight for any day of the week. It's that equality of opportunity that being in the coalition is all about.
Look, I think what started a couple of months ago, Amanda Stoker, is something I think all women, all good men too, could agree on in this country. More equality and a fairer deal for female staff in particular at Parliament House, and it morphed into other things. But absolutely now I see this as sharp partisan lines and a front that some on the left see is a good way to attack the Prime Minister. You had the meeting of the first ministerial task force for women today. This is where I guess the government, rubber hits the road, where you can make practical differences in the lives of women beyond the political posturing. What do you want to achieve?
Everything that the members of the Cabinet Women's Task Force set out to achieve is about ensuring that every policy that comes through this Parliament from the Coalition has in mind its impact on everybody, that it doesn't ever forget the needs of women, and particularly vulnerable women, in our community. Now, that means we've got important work to do. We'll be dealing with the Respect at Work report very shortly, which will deal with the practical ways we can improve women's experience in the workplace when it comes to sexual harassment. But there's important work to be done to make sure that women are getting the help and support they need in situations of domestic violence, and indeed men. That's just as serious when it occurs. There's important work to do to make sure that women at all stages of life have the tools they need to understand their finances, to secure themselves and their families financially. This is real empowerment, and it fits very well with this government's very good but often not championed record in this space. We've invested more than $1 billion in women's safety since 2013. We established special centres for women to get wraparound services for domestic violence. We have reduced the gender pay gap for those who are people who follow it from around 18% under the Julia Gillard government down to 14% under this government. We've achieved record women's workplace participation. There's a lot to be proud of when it comes to the Coalition's service of the interests of Australian women. And so we need to not rest on our laurels, we need to build on that work, but we've got a really good agenda that's all about the respect and dignity and justice for women that comes from them having the kind of equality of opportunity they deserve.
I tell you, I know you've just set up this task force, but I live in hope that I'll be alive to see it disbanded, that we no longer have a women's minister, that we no longer have a women's portfolio. I guess that's the ultimate statement that we're about where we need to be when all of those go. But good luck. You're clearly doing the right thing, Amanda Stoker, if you're unsettling the usual suspects.